Hey, it's Bill Simmons from the Bill Simmons Podcast here to tell you about Michelob Ultra Courtside. It's getting fans closer to the NBA with a chance to win prizes like courtside seats, a trip to All-Star Weekend, and much more. Check it out at MichelobUltra.com/courtside. Michelob Ultra Superior Access, Courtside 24-25 sweepstakes, no purchase necessary. Open to U.S. residents 21 and up. Begins on October 1st, 2024, ends July 1st, 2025. Multiple entry periods. Visit MichelobUltra.com/courtside for free entry deadlines, and official rules. Message and data rates may apply. Void where prohibited.
Ampire. Hey babies, hey babies, hey babies, hey babies, hey babies. Hi everyone, hi everyone, hi everyone, hi everyone. Happy Tuesday, everybody. No Callow today, just me and you. We're going to have today a segment from the Booth Review podcast. So London and I go through portions of the narrow win over the Saints on Sunday and look ahead to Philadelphia as well. You won't hear that preview. You're going to have to listen to the whole Booth Review podcast to catch all of that. Just a quick little reminder. I'll remind you again later. Get the Booth Review, commanders.com, the Commanders app, Commanders YouTube page, or anywhere you get your podcasts. Me and London do this every Monday after the games to review what we saw in the booth and get set for the next week. The thing I want to start with here, though, is just my general review. I like to defer mainly to London, obviously, on the show, because I just want to kind of get his thoughts on what he saw and what he thinks moving forward with the team and where he was. But I did a film review myself, and I'm going to share some of that with you here today. So the more I review the tape, the more this should have been a blowout. There were a few things that the Saints did really, really well. They were very good at bottling up the Commanders' run game inside the tackles, with the lone exception of scramble plays from Jaden Daniels, which I think separates him. And so there were upwards of 8 to 10 plays that Daniels made that separates him from other quarterbacks in the league. And this kind of, his ability to extend drives, change drives, put his body on the line, his just general overall feel for the game is extraordinary. And it was really on display here. There were a lot of sacks. There were a few that I would say were Saints won. Good defensive line. Chase Young playing very well in recent weeks, actually, for this team. Cam Jordan, longtime veteran, very active front. I talked about this yesterday on the show with Callow. Talked about it a lot on Friday, kind of getting ready. Very fast, good, reliable linebackers, tackling linebackers. This is a team that, this was no cakewalk. This was going to be a tough defensive team, but my feeling was, with the young quarterback and all the injuries on offense, they were going to struggle to score some points. And if Washington could get out to a 10, 14-point lead, and they did, it would just spiral on them, and the time of possession would be owned by Washington. And it was exactly as it started to kind of play out. But the reality is, Washington was its own worst enemy. More and more and more when you watch, you'll see it. I came away with a few major takeaways for me. One, the interior offensive line. It was a big deal that Tyler Biadasz wasn't in there. I thought Michael Dieter played relatively well. I don't think there was a huge amount of problems with the exchange. There was, a couple wonky snaps here or there, but I didn't see much of that. But there was some obvious discomfort, especially in the interior O-line. Sam Cosmi had a couple of moments that were tough. Nick Allegretti was beaten at the point of attack on a few occasions. Dieter was also beaten at the point of attack on a few occasions. This was a last-minute substitution, and there was a clear difference between him and Biadasz playing. So I think that's part of the story here this today. I want to give the Saints credit again, watching them. They decided they were going to bottle up the middle of the line, and they were going to cover the edges with Jaden on the zone reads as much as possible. And they were going to try to force him to beat them with his arm. And they also clearly showed him some looks, specifically early, getting back to all the sacks, that either confused him or gave him enough hesitation to not just let it rip, which is unusual for him. He's extremely decisive with the ball. Vast majority of the plays where he made his decision, it was on the money. He was extremely accurate, especially in anywhere in the intermediate, and it was to a variety of receivers. He had a strike to Olamide Zaccheaus. He had a couple of low-ish passes that were cleaned up, but on target to Jamison Crowder. Inside of 20 yards, any throw to Terry McLaurin was literally on the money. The touchdown throw, the second one to McLaurin, the first one was outrageous. The second one, it was not where the play was designed to go at all for him. It was designed to be a screen out to the right side. This is the red zone second touchdown to McLaurin. He recognized quickly it wasn't there, turned, and put some heat on this pass. Like, we haven't seen him in a short distance like this. It was just the necessary velocity to get to McLaurin. It just was, it was secondary, third read for him. It's these separating type things about Daniels. I know everyone's looking at those sack numbers and they're saying like, oh, he must have had a bad day or they confused him. Yeah, there was a little more hesitation, specifically early in the game. There was a lot of pressure by New Orleans. I think the offensive line, I will say this, Brian Robinson on a number of occasions had great blitz pickup type moments for them. But there were other occasions where Daniels had to pull off magic acts. He got, you'll recall, a third down early in the game where he was dead to rights to Carl Granderson, got out of this, was able to beat Demario Davis to the corner. The 4th and 1 play, there was a tremendous block by Brian Robinson, but there was pressure right up the middle on the interior offensive line again. So he was forced to do the leapfrog thing that salvaged that particular drive. So I think my point is this, like, Daniels, I know people are looking at the sack total and thinking that he didn't have a good game, and then they're seeing the misses, the prominent misses, 3 of them to McLaurin, one of which isn't even a miss. There should have been a pass interference call down the field on the long one against Shamar John Charles. That should have been a pass interference. It wasn't called. The first one down the middle of the seam was off by about a yard, but that needed to catch him in stride for it to get what they wanted out of it. It's the one miss on the side to McLaurin that was the busted coverage where McLaurin actually slowed down on the play and then sped up, and Daniels kind of led him just a little too far. It's the one where he, tipped up off his fingertips like 3 times. Had he taken just a little bit off of that one, that probably would have been a surefire huge play, if not a touchdown. But McLaurin did slow up just a touch. So listen, in real time, real speed, he put the ball exactly where if McLaurin didn't throttle down at all during that route, he would have hit him in stride. And had, taken just a little bit off because, he didn't need to hit him directly in the middle in stride. These are just kind of little moments where the communication was off just by a hair, and it could have been a difference. And I don't think the game would have gotten anywhere near to the heart attack mode that it got into late in the game had they scored on any one of those 3 touchdowns. And the other reality is this, like, the more I watched, so they ended up with 20 points. Greg Joseph missed a field goal. We can argue the decision there, and that's not part of the film review for me and looking back at everything. I mean, that's the decision they made, and Dan Quinn knows the game's over if he makes a goal, but he doesn't. He misses there. They miss on 3 opportunities, 2 of which I think were, one was an underthrow, should have been a PR, didn't get a call, but it was an underthrow. The second was the miss. So let's just say one of those 2, he overthrew the other one, but he had him open. Let's just say it's one of those 3. It really should have been at least 2 of those 3. The miss on the sideline and the PI down the field that should have been a penalty and get more points. Like, just take those at face value. So 7 on a touchdown to Terry, missed field goal there. The call I didn't love, the one which was the rollout with Daniels, which goes back to the original, like, this happened, in the first half when they held him, or in the second half when they held them to a field goal because they had 3rd and goal inside the 5, 3rd and goal at the 1, and decided to go design rollout with Daniels with a fake. And Cameron Jordan was right there and set up a field goal for them. I didn't love that call. One, just because you got Brian Robinson, you got Jaden Daniels, you're at the point of attack. I know you're not winning up front, but that's 2 down territory at the 1 yard line if you're just going forward and not trying anything tricky. But that's my pet peeve of that particular call. I didn't love that call on the goal line by Cliff Kingsbury, but and also because it didn't work out. Regardless, I didn't love that one. So they left 4 points on the board, probably there by making that call. They lost 7 on a miss to McLaurin. That's nobody's fault other than it just didn't connect. You could add even, so that's 11. They missed a field goal. That's 14. They get the PI down the field or hit the other one, and let's just not even bother with those. That's 34. I mean, we're looking at, they should have very easily hit 34 on a day where their interior offensive line wasn't great. The strength of the team, the run game, especially in the middle, was stunted. I want to give the Saints a lot of credit there. And Washington, so this game should, in my opinion, in rewatching this more and more and more, I've just kind of come to the conclusion this game actually shouldn't have been close. I mean, the stats read that way. If you read the stats just face value, over 40 minutes time of possession, they got an interception, did not turn the ball over. Yes, there were the 8 sacks, and yes, there were a lot of penalties, which I think was a big, big part of it. Some deserved, some not deserved. Everybody who had this takeaway at the end of it that I read and saw that they got lucky to get out of there, largely because New Orleans had a chance to steal the game at the end, and they were fortunate, obviously, that they didn't convert the 2-point conversion. I get it. That's fortunate they didn't do it. But this game was won wholeheartedly by the Commanders. It wasn't actually close. They just hurt themselves in ways that took points off the board on their own, whether it was a missed execution moment like the sideline pass to Terry, or the multiple penalties that some were, again, deserved and some were not. Both Dante Fowler penalties on pass interference or roughing the passer calls, one seemed extremely tight with the one that was put around his arm that moved them from the 8 because of a completion as well out to the 42. The second one, I guess Rattler was hit relatively high, but helmet to helmet, it was just up near the chin area. Fowler's off by an inch here on the strike zone. In both cases, one of them I felt like wasn't even really deserved. There was a holding call that would have been game time, game over on what should have been the final offensive drive where they pulled back the De'Ami Brown catch. On that drive in itself, again, going back to Daniels and the game that he had, the 4th and 1 where he goes for it, puts his body on the line. It's not there, so he just leaps over people. 3rd and 3 throw to John Bates. Bates wisely just goes to the ground immediately. There's a dart to Olamide Zaccheaus that continues this drive. The throw to De'Ami was perfection, other than they had the holding call. Unfortunately, there was a misfire. Cam Jordan made a very nice play to get in the throwing window to stop a pass to Olamide Zaccheaus. I think they made the right call running the ball with Brian Robinson up in the middle of the field to force the Saints to use a timeout there, and then they brought out the field goal unit. We can argue about Dan Quinn's decision there. Should they have punted? It looks like they should have because of the length of the field goal, but they were only up 7. If he makes the field goal, the game's over. The winning time drive that Jaden engineered over and over, he made the type of plays that do win. The stuff in the red zone, again, I didn't love the call that I was talking about earlier on that one particular drive, but early it was red zone penalties. Again, there was an illegal shift that pulled the Olamide Zaccheaus touchdown off the board. There was a hold on Sam Cosmi. This is the drive where they actually had the magic play where Jaden hit Terry McLaurin. I think the bottom line is this: the more I actually watched, the more they were, and I don't want to take anything away from the Saints because offensively, I just didn't think they had very much, and they needed to be aided by a lot of penalties. In fact, even late, it was not only just penalties, but Frankie Louvu should have had an interception late on a drive, hit him in both hands. They keep preaching the ball is life thing. There was an opportunity for an interception there. There was a couple of sacks they got away from. There were a couple calls that went their way. Otherwise, there were more drives that would have been blown up. This was far, and I mean far, from this idea that's being put out there that they were lucky to get away with a win. The score reads like they were lucky. They didn't make specific stops at the end, especially I love the way actually the Saints handled their final drive by going into run plays when Washington was backing off of the line. I thought it was just, especially without Kamara out there, I thought it was very bold of them to do that. Obviously the referees, I don't even want to get into what the referees were in this game. The PI I've referenced, obviously the clock issue at the end of the game is utterly absurd. What happened down there, and they've openly, stated that a mistake was made, and obviously the competition committee needs to look at all that, and maybe that play to Foster Moreau, the touchdown that nearly tied it or won the game for New Orleans, shouldn't have happened, but that's just kind of beside the point. over and like, listen, the other team's going to make plays on both sides of the ball, but over and over and over. One, the creativity of the Commanders' offense. They tried to stick to what is their best attribute, the run game. The interior O-line was not winning, specifically as much as we're accustomed to, and was really not winning against the Saints in this one. Daniels had 5 to 10 unreal plays to either extend drives, move drives, the 3rd and long 25-yard scramble, the 4th and 1 tumble. There was the 3rd down early where he got out dead to rights, a sack. Both touchdown throws to McLaurin in both cases. He had the 3rd down conversion to Bates, the throw to Zacchaeus to keep what should have been the game-ending drive. The throw to Brown was incredible. That should have ended it. He was phenomenal. And he's going to make mistakes. He had misses, and he took a few sacks because he didn't like what he saw. But I'll go back to what I've stated about him all along, which I think separates him. He rarely, even in these moments, puts the ball in harm's way. Like, just go look. I mean, the first touchdown to McLaurin is everything, all right? His feel for the game, it's just so different. He's scrambling. He's just buying time. Like a number of the other plays, he didn't like what he saw. Now he's just using his athleticism. He dropped the ball at the 25-yard line. It didn't even occur to him to fall on it. No, it just popped back up. He got back in his hands and immediately steps up 2 yards away from a defender and throws a strike into traffic to McLaurin, who was on the opposite side of the field when he saw the scramble play, ran back across the field, made the play in traffic in between 2 Saints defenders and a Washington receiver. That is beyond next level. And it happened so many times on Sunday that forget just the rookie of the year. He is a top 5 quarterback in the NFL right now. There's a plays that he made on his own when things broke down, when things weren't going well, and the things that they can rely on weren't quite there. Oh my God. Wait till they hopefully upgrade even a little more game-breaking, higher-end, take the top off type talent with him. Then what is this going to look like? I'm hoping Biotish is back next week. I think it was a clear, no offense, downgrade from what he had been bringing. He might be a Pro Bowl center this year from what he was bringing. I don't think the offensive line won as much as I was accustomed to. I didn't think they got away from the run plays that weren't working quickly enough. And I didn't love the red zone execution. This is reared up again. They keep getting penalties down in the red zone. The execution down there at times has been a little bit off, and it's a number of games where we've had it. But overall, 20-19, that is not what the final score of that game should have been. This was a far more dominant performance, specifically by the offense, than I think the final score looks like. All right, London Fletcher next. Bray Watch the Show, ESPN 630, Sports Capital.
This episode is brought to you by Amazon Prime. There's nothing sweeter than baking cookies during the holidays. With Prime, I get all my ingredients delivered right to my door, fast and free, no last-minute store trips needed. And of course, I blast my favorite holiday playlist on Amazon Music. It's the ultimate soundtrack for creating unforgettable memories. From streaming to shopping, it's on Prime. Visit Amazon.com/Prime to get more out of whatever you're into.
This episode is brought to you by AWS. Amazon Q Business is the new generative AI assistant from AWS. Many tasks can make business slow, like wading through mud. Help! Luckily, there's a faster, easier, less messy choice. Amazon Q can securely understand your business data to help you streamline tasks, like summarizing quarterly results or doing complex analyses in no time. Q got this. Learn what Amazon Q Business can do for you at aws.com/learn more.
Hey, it's Austin James. Yes, I'm living with diabetes, but it doesn't have to define me. Thanks to the Freestyle Libre 3 Plus sensor, I get real-time glucose readings throughout the day. The Freestyle Libre 3 Plus sensor is small and easy to wear, giving me the freedom to focus on my life as a parent and a musician. Now this is progress. You can get a free sensor at freestylelibre.us.
Offer available for people who qualify. Visit myfreestyle.us to see all terms and conditions. Certain exclusions apply. Data on file, Abbott Diabetes Care. For prescription only. Safety info found at freestylelibre.us.
Welcome back. Every week I get the opportunity to sit down with my booth mate, London Fletcher, to go over the game that we just called the day before. Of course, this one was another weird, wild, bizarre finish, 20-19. Washington beats New Orleans. It really is only half the story to suggest they got lucky because they stopped a 2-point conversion at the end of the game, or to blame the refs for even putting it in that position in the first place. This was a really nuanced game where the offense had these major ups and incredible moments from Jaden Daniels, and then some other moments where you go, what's going on here? What happened to the run game, all of the sacks, the penalties, et cetera, et cetera. So London and I got together and got to share our thoughts this week. Whoa, we're dodging bullets these days, London. Whoa, that was something down there.
Man, you ain't kidding, man. We made that a lot tougher than it should have been, but at the end of the day, the game came out of there with a victory. One thing about the mistakes we made and all those things, the corrections that need to take place is it's better to be celebrating and making those corrections in a victory than all of a sudden we're here on a Monday discussing a defeat. So they'll get those things corrected and get ready for Philadelphia this Sunday.
I got to tell you too, I don't remember a season like this in a long time. Like the way the Cincinnati game ended, the way the Dallas game ended, obviously the way the Chicago game ended, the way this game ended. This is one of the strangest up and down, you're going to have a heart attack type season every week that I've ever been a part of.
I know. I don't know if you remember what I said on the broadcast. I was like, man, down in New Orleans, my body fat is up and my blood pressure's up. I definitely enjoyed some of that good New Orleans food, but then during the game or as we got down, especially in the second half, my blood pressure was up a little bit.
Listen, anybody who's been in the French Quarter walking up and down Bourbon Street, there's highs and lows. It can be a very long day. A very long day. You never know which direction things are going to go. And the voodoo hit there, I was worried at the end there when they had one shot to go for it and win.
Yeah, and the crazy thing is, as they're going, driving, trying to get in score position, score their touchdown. In my mind, I'm thinking, I feel like they're going to go for two because if you look at the Saints, they didn't have anything to lose. Hey, you're at home, you got momentum in your favor. Why not try to win it in regulation and not risk going to overtime? So I felt like it was the right call by Rizzi to do what he did, and fortunate for us, we were able to make one more play defensively and get out of there with a victory.
I mean, listen, too. I mean, he said this in his post game, like they didn't want to give Jaden Daniels the ball back. I think this is very similar to when Dan Quinn decided to not kick a field goal. We were down 8 minutes to go. And part of his reasoning was we had to score touchdowns. Like we were having trouble stopping them. Rizzi admitted that after the game. I think his quote was, if you told me before the game we were going to hold them to 20 points and 6 in the second half, I would have told you we were going to win and that we didn't want to give the ball back to that guy. So the respect for Jaden Daniels earned here, obviously, is growing and growing and growing around the league.
No, without a doubt. And, it's a situation, again, they have momentum in their favor. So getting that late score, the Dome was rocking. They had come back they were down 17 points at one time in that game, 17-0, and to fight back, claw back, and put themselves in position to convert that 2-point conversion and win the game. I thought it was the right decision for him to make, and fortunate for us that the Igbenogany, he had tight enough coverage, and we were able to get out of there with that victory.
Yeah, let's go through what I'd like to call, to start here, because this is a weird game, stats you love and stats you don't. And I want to start with those stats you love, because I think there's a lot here that there's, the best part about this is they won. So when they do tell the truth Monday, there's a lot of truth telling to be told here of a number of things, sacks, penalties, all that type of stuff that occurred in the game that in my opinion, kept it close. Because look at some of these stats I'm going to read you now, and you're not going to believe that this was a 1-point game that came down to one play. Time of possession, they had the ball almost 41 minutes. They won the turnover margin, didn't turn the ball over, had the ball for 40 minutes, and almost lost. Like, that almost never happens.
At all, not at all. And you're scratching your head, and you're probably still like, man, how do you dominate the time of possession? Do the things that you did. Why was that game so close and nearly a loss, as you said at the end? But then you delve into it and you see all of the self-inflicted wounds, their penalties that were killing drives, that were killing momentum, the missed field goal, the offensive penalties, the defensive penalties, all those different things that took place where when you add those things up, especially the penalties, you say, okay, this is the reason why the game was exposed.
Let me give you another one too, and I think this was one of my favorite ones. Third downs, 9 of 17. You're going to take that all day. This was an out, and a lot of this was Jaden, and I think there's ups and downs with Jaden's play. His numbers, again, if you just look at the box score at the day he had, didn't turn the ball over, rushed the ball the way he did. Obviously, most of it, none of it was really, very few of it was designed. Most of it was scrambles of the major yardage that he got. Passing stats, high percentage, completion percentage, no turnovers, over 200 yards passing again, couple touchdown passes. And then you'll see the other stuff later, like the misses, the sacks, like there's a lot here on both sides. But again, if you just look at his line, you go, here's the Heisman winner striking a pose in Louisiana again.
Yeah, no, without a doubt. I will say this, the one thing, like you mentioned, the running, it wasn't necessarily design runs. It was a lot of the scrambles, the plays that he made, especially on third down to convert some third downs. From the passing game standpoint, we didn't really have the explosive plays. He missed Terry. He overthrew Terry on one play down the middle. And on the other one that Terry nearly caught 2 or 3 times, Terry actually slowed down for a half a second, and that kind of threw the timing off of that, but didn't have the explosive plays in the passing game. New Orleans, they played a ton of cover 2. And with that, they were able to stop the run playing cover 2. As we mentioned, a lot of the run success that they had was Jaden off-schedule plays, scrambles, and things like that. So those run yards, you see, hey, we rushed for over 120-something yards, but it really wasn't in the course of the structured, hey, we're going to design run plays either for Jaden or B-Rob or McNichols. It was more Jaden scrambling. The Saints, they did a great job taking away the deep stuff, taking away the shot plays, taking away the crossing routes. Kudos to them. I didn't think their defense was as good as they played, and they dominated the point of attack in the run game. So that's something, as you're looking at the film and you talk about Tell the Truth Monday, when they're in their meetings, we had some mental errors on blocking assignments in the run game, guys not sustaining blocks and not leaving some guys unblocked and also losing their one-on-one battle. So it's a lot that we need to correct, but it's good that we're correcting these things in a victory, but we got to be better, especially against the Philadelphia Eagles on Sunday.
Yeah. Let me get to one of those stats you don't love here, which is this was going in one of those, let's not overthink this thing. The Saints give up the most yards per carry in the NFL heading into this game. They have a bottom 5 rush defense. There's a lot of reasons, I think, for that. And Washington's got a top 5 rush offense, and they've got dynamic playmakers running the ball, great scheme, all this stuff. I walked in going, if they can get a lead, they're just going to run the ball down this team's throat. They'll probably, end up winning the game. And I want to give the Saints a lot of credit here because the stat you don't love, Jaden's numbers look really good, but a lot of it, again, was off schedule, really just great athletic plays that he made on his own. B-Rob and Chris Rodriguez and Jeremy McNichols, 24 carries, 71 yards. B-Rob, 3.1 a carry. That's a surprise off of it. I mean, it's an honest surprise off of this game. Here's a rush defense that's struggling. Here's a rush offense that thrives and really is the identity of the team offensively. What do you make of what the Saints were able to do yesterday?
Well, as I mentioned, it was more of us. The Saints were more physical at the point of attack. They defeated blocks. There were times where we didn't work our double teams and work up to the second level, getting to the linebacker. There was times when there were mental errors on, if we're running our counter plays and some of the other things where not identifying who block. There were times where we just ran past unblocked defenders thinking we were going when there was a guy on the first level that you should have blocked, and we left him free, and then he's making a tackle either in the backfield or at the line of scrimmage. Again, it wasn't the Saints. The Saints won their one-on-one matchups, their one-on-one battles more often than we did, and that was the reason. And they didn't have to, and they did it, Bram, with the 7-man box. It wasn't like they had the safeties. We played a lot. They played a lot of cover 2, a lot of 2 deep looks, and their front 7 was able to stop our run game. And that when you're able to do that, and you don't have to rotate a safety to the box, play 8-man fronts. They called a couple run blitzes and timely run blitzes, and that played a part. But for the majority of that game, it was a 7-man box, and their front won those matchups, and that was the reason why we weren't able to run the ball. I don't know if we got caught up in looking at their rankings coming into the game and feeling like, okay, yeah, we just came off a game where we ran for 260-something yards against the Titans, who was a really good run defense. And then, you come into this game against the Saints and like, oh, they're not that great. We should be able to run the ball effectively against them and then have the proper mindset going into the game. I don't know if that was the case, but for whatever reason, it has to be better. It has to be a whole lot better against a much better Philadelphia Eagles defensive front.
Yeah, I think going in, what I saw, and obviously tell me if you think it's just off. What I saw with the Saints defense is a very fast, active front. Actually, Chase Young's having a very nice year for them. He was top 5 in quarterback pressures. The other side, Carl Granderson, Cam Jordan, these are good pros. They're very good pass rushing players. Up the middle, though, that they're quick, but not necessarily stout. Their linebackers are outstanding. Demario Davis is kind of light. He's had a terrific, terrific career. Pete Warner's very good linebacker, good tackler. If you can get to the second level, though, that's where you don't see the willingness of their secondary to make the type of plays to support the run game. And that's where I thought over time that Washington would kind of break their back. If they could get just a few runs to get to the secondary, you're going to test them whether they want to be physical and stop people like Brian. And it just never got tested because they were losing up front. So I'm not really sure if this was just a well-schemed day for New Orleans, but I do think there's some self-scouting that needs to go in off of the bye week, that this was the one team who struggled against the run, weren't maybe as physical on the back end as you would expect a team to be good against the run, and yet they didn't need them to make those plays against the run game.
Yeah, you asked, was it a well-schemed day? The scheme that they run wasn't exotic. It wasn't anything, where they're doing a bunch of run blitzing or stunning or all kind of, cross dogs and all that. It was literally, they won their one-on-one matchups. They were more physical at the point of attack. They defeated blocks. Sometimes guys just flat out missed their blocks, either by quick movement, stuff like that. I mean, there were mental errors in the blocking game, not getting their right targets in the run game. And again, also just leaving some unblocked defenders where you should have, hey, you got to take away the first color that shows up. And, two guys, sometimes there were two guys blocking the same guy. There was also penetration that took place that knocked off some of the pullers in our counter games and our power type run plays. So it was a combination of a lot of different things. And it wasn't even about scheme. It was just these guys, the New Orleans Saints defensive front, especially their defensive line, they won at the point of attack more often than not.
The other number that obviously is troubling is 8 sacks. That's a season high. We were talking about this early in the game. Jaden Daniels admitted this. Dan Quinn said it too. This isn't all on the offensive line. Daniels was a little more indecisive than he's been. He took some of those sacks. They were either, however you want to call them, coverage sacks, or he didn't let it rip a few times and he got caught with it. And that's why I think the number ended up where it was. And I remember early in the game when we were doing it, I was talking to you going, he's seen things that he's not expecting here. So I don't know, in thinking about it again and reviewing it again, what was New Orleans doing to make him indecisive with the ball early in the game?
Again, they were playing a lot of cover too. So again, it wasn't some exotic schemes on the back end. He held the ball at least two or three of those sacks where Jaden just holding on to the football too long, where he had opportunities to take a check down, to get rid of the football. But there also were times where our offensive linemen got beat too. They got beat, and there was immediate pressure in his face. And, some of the one sack in the goal line on the 3rd and 1 where it was a design bootleg, he was going to boot out, and Cam Jordan just makes a phenomenal play. So that's a sack right there that goes down. There was a couple other times where there was just immediate pressure. So I would say maybe two or three of those sacks were on Jaden. There was also some times where he scrambled and he may have lost a yard trying to scramble to throw the football away. And so it was just, they never really got into a real flow offensively.
No. And
that really helped. Some of the penalties put us in 3rd and longer situations, obvious passing downs, and the Saints were able to pin their ears back. I thought you mentioned Chase Young. I thought Chase had a couple really nice rushes against Brandon Coleman, and he was able to get to Jaden a couple times. And a lot of those guys, man, they play really good football on the defensive front for the New Orleans Saints, and that's really the bottom line. It wasn't all of a sudden these exotic schemes where they're showing you one look and then at the snap they're rotating to these other different coverages, and that forces you to hold on to the ball a little bit longer. It was not that at all.
Yeah. The other thing that it's worth pointing out here is I don't know how much we're talking about this had they hit on some of the opportunities that they had.
Yeah.
There were 3 deep chances to Terry McLaurin. One that was down the middle that you referenced that was just overthrown by a hair. He would have had to hit him in stride. There was a second one down the field that probably maybe deserved a call, just didn't get it. It was subjective, whatever. That one was was the underthrown one that was close coverage, whatever. The call was made. The one that feels like the miss to me was the one you referenced about him down the sideline, where it was a total blown coverage. He was wide open. He did slow down a hair on that route. However, that's the one I wish Jaden just took a touch off of it, because he was so wide open that bare minimum, even if he has to slow down to make the catch, it's a 30, 40, 50-yard play, but there wasn't anybody within 10 yards of him. Even if he took a little bit off of it to make sure the catch was made, it still might have been a touchdown.
Yeah, no, so what in that play, they went to a cover 2, and the corner didn't disrupt Terry's route at all. So Terry got a free release. Jaden's trying to hold the safeties, so he's looking down the middle of the field to hold that cover 2 safety. And the cover 2 safety, he was terrible on his landmark. So I'm sure in practice, Jaden is hitting Terry in stride. So it's hey, I'm gonna hold the safety, then come throw it, and he, from a timing standpoint, Terry probably is running full speed the whole time. And as Terry came out, he was probably thinking in practice it was probably a honey hole shot where you're hitting it between the corner and the safety. So it's more of a honey hole shot. But because the safety was so bad, he never even got in a position to where he was even going to be over top of Terry. Jaden sees that, and he's throwing in more like a go ball, a deep go ball. So it just was a little Terry initially, I'm sure he's feeling like in practice, this was always a honey hole shot between the safety, between the corner. Terry's like, Jaden sees, hey, this safety's not getting over there at all. This is just a true go ball. So that was probably why Terry slowed down just a hair when he, when he beat the corner. He slowed down just a hair, and that's what led to that being an incompletion.
That's me and London Fletcher every week on the Booth Room, where you get your podcast, or you can check it out on Commanders.com, the Commanders app, or the Commanders YouTube page. Back after this, Bram Watch the Show, ESPN 630, the Sports Capital.
This year, Santa's bringing the power of Energizer into his workshop.
Whoa, the Energizer Bunny's got so much power.
Wait, he's powered up all the toys. I think that means we're done for the year.
I love this bunny.
He's the hardest working helper the North Pole has ever seen. And he wants all your gifts to have the power of the #1 longest lasting AA battery. So this holiday season, stock up on Santa's and the elves' favorite battery, Energizer Ultimate Lithium.
With Uber Reserve, good things come to those who plan ahead. Family vacay? Reserve your ride as soon as you book your flights. To all the planners, now you can reserve your Uber ride up to 90 days in advance. See Uber app for details.
This episode is brought to you by LifeLock. The holidays mean more travel, more shopping, more time online, and more personal info in places that could expose you to identity theft. That's why LifeLock monitors millions of data points every second. If your identity is stolen, their US-based restoration specialist will fix it, guaranteed or your money back. Get more holiday fun and less holiday worry with LifeLock. Save up to 40% your first year. Visit LifeLock.com/podcast. Terms apply.
All right, welcome back. Let me spend a few minutes on Micah Parsons and the Dallas Cowboys, which screams for them of history repeating. I appreciate that they've been very competitive the last few weeks, trying to hang on for dear life. Obviously, they're not going to end up making the playoffs. There's just too many teams ahead of them. So it's a lost season for them. And they've made their bed with the star players that they have. I talked about this like a long time ago. I didn't know what they were waiting on CeeDee Lamb. The guy's a top 5, top 10 receiver, prime of his career. You just pay him and you deal with it. And I don't know what took them so long to get around to it. And it probably only upped the price just a little bit on him. And then the Dak one came around, and I was advocating all along, it's the last year of his contract. Just play it out, see what happens on the other side. You can always attempt to retain him on the other side. He's on the wrong side of 30. He's had a lot of injuries. Like, this was now, of course, pre what happened, this year, but he's had some injuries, major ones. I actually thought he had a terrific season last year, but this is a very different team with a very different offensive line, with a very different running back room, not a lot of weapons to go alongside CeeDee Lamb. Like, this was going to be a very different team. And the defense, of course, was raided when Dan Quinn and Joe Witt left, and a number of the players, they had a very good unit that was still there, but they lost prominent starters on that side of the ball. And just, to me, there was no way that they were going to turn around. They'd won 12 games 3 straight years. There was just no way that all of that attrition was going to add up to a similar season. And then they made the mistake of doing the all-in thing in the offseason, and Jerry really messaged wrong with it. It was kind of a reset year, and it seemed like they were heading towards, let's play it out with Dak and make a decision about him down the road. And then they kind of got bullied into doing something. They were getting hit over the head in the media. They get an inordinate amount of attention, and they're getting hit over the head in the media about, I don't know about cheap would be the right way to put it, but just kind of like, what are you doing? Why are you mishandling players? Why are you giving them this kind of contractual leverage? And so they buckled. And I don't think I wouldn't say they buckled on CeeDee Lamb. I thought that was just logical. You have to pay him what he's worth because he's a top 5 receiver. What are you going to do? Like, you're not going to get anybody better than him. He's just, if you're resetting, I would get it. And if you're resetting, then you would trade him. You don't re-sign him. They don't feel like that they're totally in a reset. And I semi-agree with that, which is why I actually think Mike McCarthy probably stays as head coach, short of some kind of weird ending to the season. But the Dak Prescott one was the one where I think you had to think about it. Do they have anybody better than him? No. Cooper Rush is not better than him. He's not an adequate enough replacement for it. Trey Lance obviously isn't, or he'd be playing right now. Who will be on the open market? I don't know. How high of a draft pick will they have? Could they land one of the college quarterbacks? Do they think one of them is going to end up being really, really good? Like, do they want Shedeur Sanders? Is he going to go too high anyway because the Giants are picking second and they're not? Like, it's just kind of hard to know how it's going to play out. But all that said, I think they had a decision to make there. Not only because of who's the future quarterback for the team, but largely they have other stars they have to pay. And most notably and prominently is Micah Parsons. So Stephen Jones is at the owners' meetings, and he was asked about Ian Rappaport, about the Micah Parsons situation and the team situation. And he said this: to me, it would be irresponsible if every year you don't look at the full body of work and the big picture and how all of these guys fit into that big picture. And he's talking about high profile, big money, top of position type players. They're in an envious spot. They have a lot of players that warrant these types of contracts. Like, it's not like CeeDee Lamb does it. They're not misappropriating the money. He's one of the best receivers in the NFL. Like, when they paid Trayvon Diggs, I mean, it's too bad that he's had all the injuries he's had, but he's a top flight corner. Like, you pay him top flight corner money. Like, I don't think they're making bad signings. They're just choosing to do so. They have good talent, homegrown drafted talent. They've obviously developed a lot of these guys. You have to pay them. Zach Martin's making a ton of money. He's now injured. DeMarcus Lawrence is making a lot of money. He's now injured. And now we're getting to Micah Parsons, who frankly might get the biggest contract of any defensive player in the NFL. If not, he's going to be very close to it. And certainly with his profile, he's going to be asking for it. So let me go back to this quote from Stephen Jones, who says, "To me, it would be irresponsible if every year you don't look at the full body of work and the big picture and how these guys fit into that big picture and how we want to think about our team in terms of the big picture going forward." That's a very innocuous way of saying, I'm not sure we want to pay another massive salary, which when you look at Parsons, like I thought CeeDee Lamb was a no-brainer. I thought Diggs when they signed him was a no-brainer. I've argued that Dak, it's interesting when you get into this realm where he's among the highest paid quarterbacks in the league. Do you think he's one of the highest paid quarterbacks in the league? Does he elevate other people, or do you have to pay all these people around him to elevate him and give the team a chance to really win? That's an interesting question. Like, so on him, I would argue, I think you could go a cheaper route at that position if you have high-end talent everywhere else. And if you don't, then you demand that the quarterback who makes that amount of money elevates everybody else. The Chiefs have gone this model on offense. They're not paying a lot of offensive players outside of Kelsey any real kind of money. They've cycled through a lot of different receivers. They've cycled through running backs. They do pay the offensive line. They do pay Kelsey, and they do pay Mahomes. They're asking Mahomes to elevate all these other people. The Bills are going through this, a restructure on their offense. They're not paying a wide receiver top-tier money anymore. They have mid-tier deals for all these different receivers. They have Dalton Kincaid on a rookie deal. They have Dawson Knox at an affordable tight end deal. They pay a couple of their linemen some money, but like, again, they're asking Josh Allen to elevate everybody else. Is Dak capable of doing that? And that's where I would argue, I don't think he's now worth what the going rate is. CeeDee Lamb, I think so. Trayvon Diggs pre-injuries, yes, I think so. DeMarcus Lawrence, sure, I think so. Micah Parsons, for sure. But because of all this money spent, because of the lack of returns for it here, because they're hamstrung by some of these things, and because they have to make choices around it, now they're in this spot where they have what they call a balancing act. And Jones went on to say this to Ian Rappaport. I think it's a balancing act that you always have to look at, especially when you're good. Good players get hurt. They're not on the field. It totally magnifies the issue if you lose guys like Dak and Diggs misses games. Zach Martin misses games. And it's going to magnify something like that. You're going to say, God, are we smart having this much money tied into 5 to 10 players? Okay, interesting question. You have to ask that. What builds a championship model team? A lot of people feel like what Washington is right now, that they're in an interesting window with Jaden Daniels, or Houston with CJ Stroud if he plays like the rookie season that he was in, or what Joe Burrow was in a couple of years ago, that when you land in a rookie deal, you have a 3 to 5 year window to try to maximize that. And then on the other end, if they're greats like Burrow, Mahomes, Allen, and you give them the type of top tier money, well, now you have to restructure how you're going to do things. Parsons is heading into a 5th year option. He hasn't made a lot of noise, I don't think, publicly about getting paid. He's waited for Prescott and Lamb to get paid, and then asked about Micah himself, because that's where this whole conversation is going. He says, obviously, we're totally all in on Dak and CD, but after that, then you still shape things, including Micah. But Micah's a great player. You don't do well in this league letting guys like Micah usually leave the house. And he finished this because this is very couched, and maybe it's just trying to negotiate, which you have no leverage, because on the open market, Micah Parsons would make a ton of money. You have to trade him. Like, you can't actually go through and allow him to play things out. I suppose you could force him to play on the 5th year option. I suppose you could then franchise him for a couple of years. So you could play this out for a few years, but then he would have to take matters into his own hands and demand the type of deal that either they're unwilling or unwilling to play. And for him, because he's at the top of his game right now in the prime of his career, he'd be crazy not to force them to give him the massive giant contract. And we'll see how the Cowboys respond to that. Lastly, Jones said this: we love Micah. I can't imagine there's a scenario where he's not wearing a star on his helmet. So I think that's the truth. They're going to get it done. It's rare that one of their stars doesn't go somewhere else. And they obviously realize letting really great, talented players go other places is not typically a path to success. There's obviously exceptions along the way, and there's reasoning behind those exceptions. But letting this guy go, one of the best defensive players in the NFL in the prime of his career, makes no sense. And so Micah Parsons, of course, was asked about this story. And he said this to John Machota, who covers the team down in Dallas. I understand how the business side goes. There are no hard feelings in this business, whether I'm here or anywhere else. Obviously, I've stated I want to be here, but at the end of the day, I understand the business side. I've put in a lot of work. I've played hard too. So obviously, if sides can't agree on those type of things, it happens like that. But I'm just happy to be here. I'm just going to keep playing hard while I'm here. If I'm here for the next 5 to 6 years, I'm going to keep playing hard then too. And nothing's really going to make a difference. Micah's going to play hard. This may be just a giant negotiating tactic. And I'm inclined to believe that it is. But they've had a bust of a season after they paid a lot of money to people. San Francisco has a similar thing that they're going to have to reconcile with. And they're saying, is it worthwhile to pay these guys? Which will lead to, if they don't do it quickly and they let it linger, it's going to simmer. And because it's the Cowboys, it's going to become a thing. And then all of a sudden, Micah Parsons is going to wonder, do they really actually want me here? And then he might get public because he can in a big way. They better handle this one differently than CeeDee Lamb or Dak Prescott. And they better handle it fast. Because if they don't, it's going to be every day on First Take, and maybe Micah's going to get some weird ideas and want to play somewhere else. And before you start going, I get which coordinator do you love to play for? I ain't going there. He's Cowboys property, and I don't know that we're in the business of paying the highest number for any player to come into a locker room, especially one who's as public as he is, which would be a very different mentality for someone to come here. Not that I'm against talent, but I am saying this is going to get weird if Jerry doesn't change his way, Stephen Jones too. If they don't change their way about how they handle their business, unlike Dak and CD, it's going to get weird. It's going to get weird fast. Talk to you tomorrow. Bram wants to show ESPN 630 Sports Capital.